my dumps.
For every excretion belonging to me.
This good belongs to you. I stopped somewhere squatting for you.
Are you good?
Oh my god, dude. Am I ever?
Yeah. I squat for you.
I stopped somewhere.
As I squat behind the bush.
Squat somewhere spreading my cheeks for you.
And every cheek spread is me.
I am the left cheek and I am the right cheek.
And I am the hole between the two.
I am the cheek of the mayor and the cheek of the president. I'm the cheek of the hag.
The cheek of the hairy and the hairless.
And the cheek of thy neighbor is thy neighbor. Yeah, some shit like that.
Yeah, dude. Leaves of grass.
Yeah.
Alright, you ready for this?
Dude. Do you have that, like, full body picture of Whitman in yours?
It's like half.
No, like I don't think I have it in mine. There was some fucking thing about how Whitman put, like, when he published it with an image of himself that was like full bodied instead of just like from, the shoulders up.
Right.
And that was apparently a big deal because, I don't know, poets are only shoulders and heads.
I remember reading something about how his pictures, he liked to be in like work clothes and things like that. He wouldn't be wearing like nice suits or something, or overcoats or hats. Be very common clothing, as they would call it, whatever that means. I guess it just means not expensive.
Yeah, well, he had that stupid fucking hat.
All right. This is episode 12. 12 episodes. 12th episode of Heavy Board. My name's Andrew Whitstadt.
And I'm Sophie Weiner.
And today we're discussing Walt Whitman's classic, The Leaves of Grass. This book really doesn't need much introduction. I mean, even people that don't like books and have never read a book in their life have heard of Leaves of Grass and know it's kind of like Walt Whitman. I feel like most people can make that connection if you bring up Walt Whitman. They just kind of intuitively know.
He's the guy who sings himself.
Yeah, not even intuitively know. It's just like, it's in your curriculum. If you went to school in America, like, Walt Whitman has been brought up every fucking grade of your of your schooling. Every English class, they bring it up. All that kind of stuff. But we had...
Yeah, I don't know. I went to public school. We didn't have that.
You didn't read Whitman?
No.
You didn't even read excerpts of Whitman in like your English curriculum?
Not until college.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn. Well, maybe you didn't then.
Yeah.
Maybe people have no idea who Walt Whitman is. Maybe they have no fucking clue. Oh, is this the picture?
Yeah, that's the picture.
Okay, yeah, I do have it in my copy, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's much younger. We know him. We know his like Whitman's face as like an older man when he was a little bit more famous and kind of regarded. But the younger picture, yeah. I guess this was kind of, before photographs too, right? I mean, not before photographs, but before they were like really common.
Yeah, I don't have any pictures of Whitman in my copy. I have the Goldman Classics Deathbed Edition.
Right, so we should get into that.
Yeah.
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a lot longer. It's the, supposedly the last version of the book that he put out, which he put out many, many times over his life, and it just sort of kept growing and he kept editing. It grew to include like some 300 poems. That includes like not just what we know to be, I guess, the original 12 poems that are in Leaves of Grass, but also like all of the poems from Drum Taps, and those original 12 poems that we know from Leaves of Grass are spread out, except for one, which I still couldn't find. I had to read online.
Really?
Yeah, last poem in the original version of Leaves of Grass I didn't have in this copy. But you can find that online too, so it's not that big of a deal.
The great are the myths.
Yeah,
I too
great are the
delight in
myths.
them.
Yeah. I looked through the index of first lines too, and I couldn't find it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sophie has an interesting, like the last version that he put out, which is much longer than mine. I have the Dover Thrift edition of the original 1855 text. So mine is like much shorter than Sophie's. Mine was like 113 pages in total. That includes Whitman's kind of manifesto in the front, as well as like a short, or I guess they say excerpted. Why do you say that word? Excerpt.
Excerpted. Yeah, excerpted.
Introduction by. Damn it! Who's the person that did this? Bliss Perry. And it was excerpted from the American Spirit and Literature, blah, blah, from 1918. So just a shorter version of kind of his essay on that. Honestly,
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have an introduction to this. Oh wait, yes I do. I guess I skipped it. Yeah. Okay, I remember now. Mine was Justin Kaplan, who's like just a Whitman guy, I guess.
Yeah. So it's interesting that there are so many editions of this book. We've talked a little bit about like poets that are constantly doing the revisions and then re-releasing editions and stuff, or editing books and poems that have, you know, I don't know, I guess over their lifetime they just keep editing them and stuff and then republishing them. Yeah, and so he just kept adding to this book over and over again. But mine, I only have the original 12, so this is like the original publication. And it has kind of this, like the original publication does start with this kind of manifesto, I would call it, of Whitman's, where he kind of not necessarily argues for, but just, you know, like expresses his technique, why he's doing this, his kind of ethos behind his methods, his approach, all that kind of stuff.
Oh my God, I'm looking back at the so Song of Myself, I assume, is uh the first for you?
Yeah.
The first in the book for you?
Yeah, that's the other thing, listeners. Like, if you buy the edition I have, like, there are no titles in this edition. They literally just basically reproduce the original text, where he just kind of put out these long, and like the big long main poem is what he came to call Song of Myself later, which is his maybe his most famous.
Song of Myself, I would say it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, right, if you know one poem by Whitman, like if you know a title of any poem by Whitman, it might well be that one.
Yeah. So there's that fun little thing.
Or Oh Captain, My Captain, I guess, but that's a different book.
Yeah.
Unless you have this copy.
Right. Yeah, it is a little weird format wise, but this was also at a time when like the kind of poetry collection as we know it like didn't really exist. Right?
Yeah.
At least like as we know it, like they were putting out what they called volumes of poetry, but like it wasn't like what we would consider a collection or a book today. A little different.
Yeah, he splits it into books in the longer edition. So like the first the first section is inscriptions, and those lead up to Song of Myself. And then we get starting from Paumanok, and then we get Leaves of Grass. Then we get Song of Myself.
One of the interesting things that I learned while I was reading this book, and then like the introductions and the essays and stuff around it, I guess I was surprised, but I wasn't that surprised to learn that this was self-published.
Oh, I wasn't surprised by that.
Yeah. He set the type himself, and he hunted, I think, they said in the book, like 800 copies originally that he like printed himself, literally setting the type and like pressing it like they did in the old days. And I guess he was basically just like a street guy just handing out copies. I mean, I don't know.
Well, didn't he like send a copy to Thoreau?
Yeah, probably.
And then I think Thoreau wrote him a letter. And then like a year later or something, Whitman republished it. And he put a quote from, was it Thoreau or Emerson? I always mix these two up. One of them. But either way, he got a letter from one of them, and then like without any kinds of permission or anything, he just like he put one of the praises that was given him in that letter on the spine of the book.
Yeah. And it's important to note, if you don't know already, I mean, the book was condemned. There was a lot of controversy. It was called immoral, all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that, but yeah, just so you know. Damn. All right, so Transcendentalism. Oh my god, dude. I can't stand Transcendentalism.
It just gets really boring.
I'm sure there are some listeners out there that really enjoy Transcendentalism and like what it, and kind of in tandem with the Romantics, what they were doing at the time. But my first question was, if we just get into it, like, is Whitman part of the Transcendentalist movement?
He's certainly an outgrowth of it.
Yeah.
I think, isn't that sort of like what he took after? Like, I think that's very much what, oh, yeah, there it is. It was Emerson.
Okay.
The wonderful gift, the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed. That's what Emerson said. I think that's sort of the new tradition of the moment that he's trying to sort of follow in.
Yeah, and that kind of follows. It was kind of like a branch off of the Romantics, would you say?
I know so little about the transcendental movement and elected to skip over as much of it as possible in my education because it didn't speak to me.
Yeah,
I was
too,
so
dude.
bored by it.
Every time
and
I was
now
forced to
recall why.
Yeah, dude, every time I was forced to read like Walden's Pond,
I never read it.
Yeah, same, dude. I would just skip it in school and be like, oh, it's not important.
We are all one. Is what I got from it all.
Yeah. But yeah, as long as you kind of know that, okay, that's the framework, he's kind of in this. And the Transcendentalists, the reason I always group them into Romantics, one, because I guess the periods were kind of happening simultaneously. If Romanticism obviously was much earlier, but it lasted a while, and then Transcendentalism got like, I don't know, it's almost like the more extreme of Romantic kind of beliefs.
It's
or ethos or ether, whatever the fuck it exists in.
I just always thought of it as like more American, I guess. Or like distinctly American somehow.
Yeah, and I think
it's born in America. I think that it was like a New England thing.
Yeah. And that's something we should keep in mind too as we read old books like this. Transcendentalism might have been like the first like real American literary movement, or at least like the most like the biggest, and like, you know, before that we were basically just kind of following the British lead, I guess, right? So like all those kind of British romantics and stuff. uh, America, I mean, you know, very young country compared to a lot of others, so at this time it was even younger than it is now. And it was just kind of like, okay, these are like the first like American poets, like strictly American, right?
Yeah, and philosophers and,
Right.
you know.
So there's a reason they hold him up as like a forefather. That movement, in particularly, was like one of the first very American, like, these are American writers and these are American poems and things like that.
Well, what came right before the Transcendentalists? Was that like, when was like the Puritan?
I have no idea, dude.
So that was England, 1500s. Yeah, I don't know shit about history, I guess. I don't remember any of this shit. What came right before Transcendentalism?
I don't know, dude. I have no idea.
Let's see.
Yeah, dude, it doesn't matter what came before it, dude.
Yeah, it
I would assume
was greatly
Romanticism.
influenced by the Unitarian faith. But that's all I got.
That makes a little bit of sense. But all right, we'll just get into it then. That's enough background. Just so you know, we'll bring up the context as we go through a few of these too. Initial thoughts. What did you think, Soph? And you read the much
God,
longer. Yeah.
I did not, I do not want any of you thinking that I read this book in its entirety. I, I read those 12 poems plus a few extra. Um, and I gotta tell you, you know, I am sick of anaphora. Like just fucking lists starting with the same words. I got so bored in so many moments and was like, wait, what are we talking about? It does all sort of, with the exception of a few, it feels kind of like it's all just one poem. And maybe that's even truer for you because yours doesn't have titles.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, there were places where I was just like, oh, this is just all Song of Myself spread out across this long ass book.
Yeah, I'd say the original 12 were very much extensions of the big long Song of Myself, you know. They're not all of them, but yeah, they're most of them were just like extensions of the same, even the same sentiments, like the same things, which is the transcendentalist kind of, you know. I don't know. My initial thoughts on this, I kept telling Sophie this as we read through it this week. Like I was trying very hard to not let myself be cynical about this.
It's really hard not to be.
Yeah, and I'm a cynical person, so that may just be like my personal problem. But like I was struggling to not be cynical about this, just because it's so easy to be like, oh, you know, fuck Walt Whitman, or ignore something like a text like this, like we did, like we admitted that we did with transcendentalism all through school, things like that. Like it's easy to do that. So I
It
was,
also, yeah, it also like wasn't a big part of like my education. It
yeah,
was like they mentioned Emerson and Thoreau, like they mentioned Walden, you know,
yeah,
mentioned Whitman maybe.
that's something interesting. Like I've been thinking about this more recently, just kind of how much of my education, you know, I'm not blaming anybody or any, I mean, it's my own fault really if I didn't go through and read these things, but I am kind of fascinated by how preoccupied my education was in terms of studying English at the college level, just how preoccupied it was with the 20th century and not much
Really?
else. Well, just not much else besides, yeah, 20th century, basically from the modernists till contemporary stuff, was the majority of the classes offered.
Damn, I
Maj-
didn't touch any of that. Like, I think we touched, like, we did, like, Mark Twain, Well, like we
Which,
did some basics. We did Shakespeare, Twain,
yeah,
uh, uh, some of the like what's that like Salem witch trial one,
Crucible.
Crucible.
That's 20th century though. I mean, Arthur Miller, like I'd say
Oh yeah.
Twain is like turn of the century. He had a few before, and then he had kind of got. I think Huck. I don't know this, but I think Huck Finn was 20th century, wasn't it? Or is it just before,
Dude, I don't know. I fucking hated it.
like
I
1890s?
I barely read it. I was like, I can't stand
You
this.
didn't like Huck Finn?
And like Huck Finn. And especially like Romeo and Juliet, but I liked it better than Huck Finn. I liked The Crucible better than Huck Finn.
I guess it's like Huck Finn is very much like a boy kind of book too. Like just kind of like it follows a young boy, so it might appeal more to young men than it would to young women in that regard. So I could understand why.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. Like the more I think back on it, yeah, like what periods are skipped over majority of these places. I guess it depends what school you went to, how big the English department is, how many experts they have on staff in whatever period. But there are these huge gaps. If you just get like a normal English degree, like you'll study Shakespeare, you'll probably hit Milton, so you'll hit those guys. But then it's kind of a free for all. You might get a few guys that come out like Pope and stuff in the 1700s, but like you could kind of easily ignore that and like still get through school. And then it's mostly 20th century. Like it's mostly modernism to contemporary basically. And it is kind of, and then whatever, we're kind of obsessed with our most recent period, like everybody is. Why wouldn't we be, kind of thing? But it is kind of, I don't know, just something I've been thinking about. I'm getting off topic.
Oh, this makes sense. Okay. So that's why I was thinking of this. So I was trying to remember the name of that conceit we all had to read in high school. It was Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. That was from like the First Great Awakening, so like the evangelical revival, and that was 1730 to 1755.
Right. But yeah, my initial thoughts was I was trying very hard not to be cynical, and like I said, I've never been a big fan of the Transcendentalists, partly because I haven't read most of it, probably. Uh, but I did struggle at times. Again, this is a short book. I didn't read. Sophie had a much longer version. When you get like the deathbed, his final version of it, which is When was that published? Do you know the big one?
I mean, I think 1890. Hang on, let me check.
Right. So almost 50 years after the first version.
Let's see. This is the 1892 deathbed edition in its entirety. Well,
Okay.
it's a reprint. This
Right.
particular copy is from apparently Germany in 1983.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, mine, for listeners that care about that stuff, I think mine was 2007. But it's a reprint of the 1855 um, edition. But yeah, so that's about 40 years separates the two versions, which is interesting. Like 40 years, Life of Poet. That's interesting stuff. But I did, yeah. I kept finding myself getting tired, getting bored, getting kind of like, okay, okay.
Well, especially when you're reading Song of Myself because it's 52 fucking sections long.
Yeah.
Some of which are very long. There was one section that I was like, "Oh my fucking mother of God, this is so motherfucking long." And I was just like, I don't know if I can get through this. And then I found an audio version of it. And I was like, get me through, man.
Oh, you
Get me
listened
through
to some
this.
audio stuff?
Oh, yeah.
How was that?
It was honestly a much more enjoyable experience. Even if you have it on like while you're reading. I don't know what, like maybe it's just because it's such a list that I can't, like the voice in my head just can't both keep up with like um where all of the emphasis should be and what the tone should be and also with like the content. Like it's just
Right.
like I'm always reaching back several however many lines to look for like how did this list begin? Like, oh God, I bet I could just open this and find one.
Yeah, and part of my impression of this was I kept trying, in order to not be so cynical and dismissive, I kept trying to be like, okay, remind myself of the context of this, as you're reading through this. Don't be an asshole. Don't write this off. Be like, okay, there was a lot of turmoil in the country at this time, right? This is leading up to the start of the Civil War, all that kind of shit. Nobody had fucking seen free verse before. Like, nobody had done this. Like, nobody had just said, fuck rhyme and meter. And he doesn't entirely abandon meter. I mean, some of the stuff is very, very musical.
Or rhyme.
Yeah, but it's not like, uniformed like we would expect in poetry up until this point, essentially.
Yeah, but it's very like, the world is poetry.
Yeah, very transcendentalist, romantic, all those kinds of things. So
and
I
we
kept
speak
trying
in this American way and like in
Right.
this more American style.
And America's becoming a new powerhouse kind of thing. Like, it's just starting to kind of get global power in terms of trade and like economic stuff, which just bores the shit out of most people that are interested in books like us.
Well,
So
yeah, and also with this much like fucking anaphora and that much like repetition of just sentence structure over
right.
and over and over again, like you do get bored.
Yeah.
That's just how it would work if it were prose too. You get
And
fucking bored.
that's what I mean. I kept trying to avoid saying, "Oh, this is boring," because it's just so easy to, to do that. It doesn't take anything to dismiss a great work, even if we do find it boring. So I
Yeah,
kept
and
trying
indulgent
to.
as shit.
Yeah, it was indulgent. It was very indulgent. Yeah. Uh,
And
yeah, go for it.
we can say that because we don't have a teacher here to scowl at us.
Yeah, dude. How dare you? No, but yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of felt like I did have, or maybe it's the teacher in me that was like, well, you must appreciate this.
Yeah, of course.
You must appreciate this. Appreciate this.
But I still couldn't help myself when there's this one section. There are so many moments where it's just like maybe because every time you hear about Whitman, you hear something about sexuality,
Yeah, that
which
too. It was
I'm sure
very
is,
sexual at the time, right? Very
yeah,
sexual for 1855. I mean, we're talking, and the stuff he was saying was very, it fanned a lot of flames. He was basically dumping gasoline. There was growing sentiments of abolition, right? All that kind of stuff. He's talking about men and women being equal. He's talking about slaves and stuff being equal, and like
yeah,
people didn't like
sexual relationships
right.
between two men and shit.
Yeah,
Like,
and
yeah,
people
people
didn't
didn't love
like
that.
that. Yeah, like people didn't like hearing that at the time. So it was very, I mean, I mean, it was risky to publish something like this, right? I mean, it was,
Of course,
so we
but
have to kind of
also,
appreciate that context, is all I'm saying, before we dismiss, like, oh, I'm bored, you know?
yeah, of course. I mean, all of it, is very inventive and new and exciting, I'm sure.
Right.
But that because of that context and because of always hearing that, like about Whitman's sexuality and all of that shit, I think there were so many moments where I was reading Song of Myself and I was like, is that a sex thing? Is that a sex thing?
uh,
Is that sexual? There's this one moment where he says, open your scarfed chops till I blow grit within you.
one,
I was like,
one,
oh my God,
one of the things
gross.
of one of the things in the introduction by Bliss Perry here. Again, this was published in 1918. This introduction that they include in my version, I quoted. Uh, this was the famous Leaves of Grass. He set the type himself in a Brooklyn printing office and printed about 800 copies. The book had a portrait of the author, a meditative gray-bearded poet in workman's clothes, and a confused preface on America as a field for the true poet. And yeah, I think that does sum it up, because he gives us this kind of, it's like a preface, but I would call it almost a manifesto. He's kind of trying to do what a lot of poets do, which is like, this is my style, this is why it matters, this is why I do it. And these became more popular as time went on. Like in the 20th century, I mean, almost everybody had a fucking manifesto about their style or the craft of it, right? All that kind of things. But one thing that Perry said in his introduction to my edition that I really liked, and he says, there are puzzling things in the physical and moral constitution of Walt Whitman. and the obstinate questions involved in his theory of poetry and in his actual poetical performance are still far from solution. But a few points concerning him are by this time fairly clear. Right. And he goes on to summarize a few points, but again, this is like a excerpt of a longer essay. So they kind of go over them quickly, but that's not important. But yeah, I think there is like, whenever there's a big figure like this, we tend to think that everything's settled about them, but it's never going to be settled, right? I mean, this is half the fun of talking about art and books, is that we can always come up with new ideas, new interpretations, whatever we want. It's kind of anything goes within a certain reason.
And you can, always have the right to not like it.
Yeah. And I as I was reading this too, I was kind of going through and I was like, I see why he's held up as so important too, because like his ideas, or at least like the kind of lofty ideals that he believes America to be, it makes sense that everybody kind of likes that, because it does eventually become what America is trying to be, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't at the time, right? So, and maybe still isn't now, some would argue, but it's like, there is like something, right? So he says in his kind of manifesto, the Americans of all nations at any time upon the earth have probably the fullest poetical nature. The United States themselves are essentially the greatest poem. And he goes on in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And he's,
Calling things that aren't poems.
Right, yeah. That's, the romanticizing, the expanding to nonsense kind of thing, but still. And he says mostly like the largeness and generosity of the spirit of the citizen, where he talks, those that follow Whitman or maybe those that don't. Like, he's very much about the common man, i.e., not the aristocracy, right? Not the people that were like landowners and, setting the rules for everybody else, kind of thing.
Although he does claim in Song of Myself that he is as much, the villain as
Right.
he is the good guy.
Yeah, and he is, right? Because, I don't think his family wasn't essentially like wealthy aristocracy, but he wasn't necessarily poor either, right? Like his dad owned like a wood shop. So they were like, okay, they did all right. Like they weren't like starving, but he went
Yeah.
to
I mean, I
school.
think,
He was obviously
yeah,
highly educated. If you were
I
educated at the
don't,
time, you had
well, I
money
don't know. I don't know that he was like formally educated,
at
but
university.
I think he educated himself.
Yeah. Well, either way, I just mean like if you were able to read at that time,
Yeah.
you probably
You
got
had some
some.
amount of privilege.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like if you learned how to read, you were probably
He was
ahead of the
also a white
common.
guy in the 1800s.
Right. Yeah. At a time, yeah, where there wasn't equality or anything even close to resembling it, like not even close to what we like to say we aspire to now. But yeah, but that's and it kind of keeps going on like that, just to give you an idea of the introduction in the original version here. That's why I call it kind of a manifesto, because he does kind of keep going what he's trying to do with these long poems, why he feels that it's necessary to, break from form, break from these traditions, start new traditions. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's a heartwarming kind of sentimental, if not sometimes naive argument or manifesto that he's saying about his work. And everybody
Yeah,
should
he
just buy a
wants to
copy.
be
Yeah,
he
read
he
it.
wants to create a poetry of democracy,
Right.
but also a poetry of self.
Yeah, like as piss
Do it do with that what you will.
as Bliss Perry says, a confused preface on America as a field for the true poet. So it's somewhat confused. It is. If we're being like, trying to be fair about it. It's a little bit confused, kind of full of a few contradictions, but there is this thing in poetry, and maybe it did start with Whitman. I don't know about it. We'll get some angry emails from scholars that are saying we're wrong, but it's like he was trying to break the rules, but like establish kind of new things. Like he's trying to take that kind of like, well, this is America. We don't have to follow the British tradition of this shit, Like we don't have to. Let's make our own. And it is like
It's
a kind of
also
a, yeah, go for
it's
it.
also like hard not to read as like a little vain.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. very indulgent. We already said that. Like there is a lot of self-indulgence about this. So maybe we should. What do we mean by self-indulgence? Maybe people are
I
going to be
mean, well,
upset.
anyone who knows the line "I contain multitudes"
Yeah,
probably has some sense of that.
yeah.
And also just, I mean, anyone who I think it's very bold. It's also like I am going to speak on behalf of a people.
Behalf
I
of
will
all
say that
people, basically.
I am as much, the slave as the master.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's like a lot of that.
Little naive.
And to
Yeah.
like a lot of just like feeling himself, like being like,
Yeah.
yeah, let me smell myself.
Yeah.
I
The
smell myself so fucking much.
the sweat of a workday. Oh, did you imagine what
Yeah.
people smelled like in 1855,
Probably
dude?
fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like piss and shit.
Oh my god, dude. Onion room clearing BO, dude. Like
Imagine
like
the
oh my
quality of
god.
wiping.
There was no wiping, was there? I guess there
Exact. I
was.
don't know. I mean, with like not with anything good.
No impact man style, dude. Just leaving it. Let those dingleberries dry up.
Just using your hand. I contend that that's what he did. I'm
Probably.
talking about what's his name? No Impact Man.
Oh.
I don't fucking remember his name.
Colin
Someone
Beavan.
go look. Yeah,
Colin
something like
Beavan
that.
wrote No Impact Man,
Yeah. That's a
yeah.
man who
The re-
wipes with his hand.
the reason Sophie and I it's honestly this is when Sophie and I first met like over a decade ago in community college, and we had this talk by Colin Beavan who just came out with that book No Impact Man, and we all had to go as like part of our English classes, and Sophie and I were just like sitting in the back with your future husband at the time, but you guys were just met, and we were all and I remember us just sitting there and be like, wait, he didn't use toilet paper? And like everybody was just kind of like trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, how did you shit? Did you use
Yeah, and he gets really like offended by
and he
people
wouldn't
asking
answer,
him
which made it
that.
even more mysterious. So we were like, wait, no, what did you
It's not
do?
even, it made it even less. It's like, oh, you're not willing to tell us, like you're not proud that you wipe with your hand. Like, what's the deal, man?
Or yeah, I mean,
Like,
it
like just own it, you
bidets.
know?
I know my friend in grad school.
Certainly not bidets. No way he was using more water.
My friend
No
in
way.
my friend in grad school said he had some roommates from I forget what country, but he said they wouldn't use I can't even remember, but he said they would just get in the shower and just like kind of hose off their butts
Hmm.
after kind of thing.
I mean,
Like
like shit to shower is a good thing,
like
but
a
like you
make
gotta wipe
well that's
first.
the thing is it wasn't shit to shower, it was just literally the wiping. And he said he
It
would
was
get
like,
pissed off because sometimes there would be like remnants like in the shower
that's not
drain.
okay.
Yeah, and he would have to be like, "Hey, dude, like wash it down."
Don't do it.
Wash that shit
Wipe
down
your
when you're done.
ass.
Yeah. Or if you're not, like at least wash it down when you're done.
Make it so I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of thing. And I don't know where I can't even remember where but there are ways to do that. Yeah, anyway, we're way off topic now, dude, talking about wiping your butt in because of some nonfiction book project you had to write for your publisher.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, he seemed like a piece of shit. Um,
all right, so Leaves of Grass. Where do you want to start with this, Soph? I guess we should start with Song of Myself, because, I mean,
yeah, probably.
I guess we're going to have to.
What's there to say? Shit's equal. That's really the vibe we get. I mean, we get,
Well, and he tries to lay down this philosophy about, like, what makes a good poet, and perhaps, like, what is the aim of this new country's poets. Like, they should be maybe doing something different than all the other countries that came before, kind of thing. So there is that,
yeah,
but,
have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. And that is in part 2. It's pretty early on.
Is that
That's like the end of part 2.
the smoke of my own breath?
That's the one that starts houses and rooms are full of perfumes.
Okay, yeah.
I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it.
Okay, so honestly, we have two different. We'll see how because yours separated into sections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mine is not. So I guess he added sections later on. It's interesting that he added more structure as he
Yeah.
went through instead of less.
Really, you think?
Well,
I think it makes sense that
I
he
think
added
I
more
think it makes
first.
sense, but I think it goes against kind of the free verse, adding a little structure here and there to.
It probably added a lot more clarity
Right. This, I mean, the free is
to,
only so free, right? Like it's only so.
yeah.
If you lose the realm of meaning, well, then you're kind of going into nonsense. Yeah. But my first question before we get into details or any specific lines you want to hit, the ellipses.
Yeah.
Did yours have a lot of ellipses, or did he edit those out later on?
I think he must have edited a lot of those out because there was not a lot in this poem.
Holy shit,
They're
dude!
here and there.
In this
Like, and
one,
because I was reading I was looking at the introduction that you have, not the introduction, like Whitman's
kind of like
own
yeah,
introduction.
yeah,
And there were a shitload of ellipses in
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
was like,
Dude, like my
this must be
version,
what,
I know you probably can't see this. It's like literally
oh,
every sentence. There's like an ellipses after to kind of separate. Okay, yeah, so very different.
yeah.
Just in that
Yeah, I don't
second
have
stanza.
nearly as many.
So very interesting. And I guess we've talked about ellipses before. We've hit on them. Poets use them in a couple different ways. He's not really using them in like a unique way in this, but he is using them often and kind of in place of commas or periods. And I guess he kind of takes that away in later edits.
Yeah, maybe that's where commas are, where I was like, because
The
I
fir-
was getting really bitchy about commas for
yeah,
at first.
the
I
first
had to really
the
get
first
used to it.
ellipses in the whole song of myself that isn't in yours that you just showed me. I loaf and invite my soul, comma, break. I lean and loaf at my ease, ellipses, observing a spear of summer grass.
Yeah, I don't have.
Yeah, and then you go, houses and rooms are full of perfumes, ellipses, the shelves are crowded with perfumes, comma, break. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. And that keeps
Yeah,
happening.
that first one is just a comma after perfumes in my copy, but there's nothing after um, Eileen and loaf at my ease. It's just
Observing a
Eileen and
spear.
loaf. Yeah, there's
Okay.
no punctuation there.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, then it does act as like a comma in a few of these instances, and then he did just kind of edit them out because they do work, but they are, I would say, they're overused. This is part of the indulgence in his kind of style here, which makes sense that he kind of edited them out through different various versions because they are kind of indulged. They're not needed in every instance here. They're not doing much that a comma and or period would do, right? Kind of thing. Uh, but that's interesting. Okay. Well, there's my first question. Just doesn't matter at all because he edited them out eventually.
Yeah, apparently he didn't think they mattered enough.
Right. Well, and the way they're used, I would say, is they don't really. Like,
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about, like, when we did Kelly's book, and obviously this is, 150 years after Whitman, but
Yeah.
she used them in, I think, a couple different unique ways and used them as kind of like a uh, all-encompassing kind of punctuation mark, uh, similar to like an M dash or something like that. She really kind of used
Yeah.
them in a unique way, in various different ways. And here it's just kind of like dot dot dot, pause, some move on kind of thing. Nothing super special, but it was 150 years ago, if more than that now. So 175 years almost.
Yeah, but I think these first sections were where maybe I was still at my most interested. So I was like the most enthusiastic. And maybe it's just because it's at the beginning and like he hadn't hit on these ideas over and over again.
Right.
That and the places where we got a sense of like something is happening. Like we got a concrete scene. Because there are moments that feel just straight up like prose.
Yeah.
Like when he's like if he's telling sort of a story, if there's a bit of narrative happening, like the bit where he like there's this part where he um helps a slave who's escaped. I don't remember which section it is, but either way, like the moments, yeah. Oh, it's section 10 for me. The runaway slave came to my house and stopped outside. I heard his motions crackling at the twigs of the woodpile. Through the swung half door of the kitchen, I saw him limpsy and weak. I like, at least like, I don't know. I felt like that anchored me after so many lists.
Yeah.
After so many lists of like, you know, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice, loose to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses. I mean, this is so much of the poem, and it's not even the most repetitive, and it's not that that's bad, it's just that over 52 sections.
I don't even have sections. It's just like 60 pages of that.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
And it is the same. It is very repetitive. That's what I'll say about this kind of, especially Song of Myself. And a lot of the other original 12 poems that were in this. Again, my version doesn't have titles because he didn't give them titles until the second version. It is kind of repetitive. I wrote down, yeah, Song of Myself is a doozy. And I wrote down
Yeah.
incredibly long-winded. But also there is an energy, like it's very energetic. Like you can feel the excitement, the energy, what you might call passion, maybe,
Yeah.
kind of coming through. And there are some beautiful, great fucking poetic lines, you know, like there are some
Yeah.
banger lines. We talked about the kind of ending line, right? Bloom always talked about that. We talked about that on the Bloom episode, the look for me under your boot soles line. Very great. I have heard what the talkers were talking, the talk of the beginning and the end. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a great fucking line. All these things that I have no mockings or arguments. I witness and wait.
Yeah.
Not asking the sky to come down to my goodwill. I like that. What is commonest and cheapest and nearest and easiest is me. Me going in for my chances, spending for vast returns, adorning myself to bestow myself on the first that will take me, not asking the sky to come down to my goodwill, scattering it freely forever. Fucking great little bit.
Yeah. One world is aware and by far the largest to me, and that is myself.
Yeah. Another, I do not snivel the world over, that months are vacuums in the ground but wallow in filth, that life is a suck in a cell and nothing remains at the end but threadbare crepe and tears. I cock my hat as I please, indoors or out. Yeah, like that's a great little line there. And also, for those that don't know, very rebellious to say that you're going to cock your hat indoors or out as you please. Like, if you didn't take your hat off when you went indoors, like, you were considered, like, blasphemous or, you know, at this time at least, kind of like hats were, like, a very big thing for men. And I guess bonnets for women, like the idea of covering your head or something. I don't know. I mean, I guess it comes out of a religious thing, right?
Yeah. 28 young men bathed by the shore, 28 young men and also friendly. 28 years of womanly life and also lonesome. Yeah.
And there
are some
of
great moments.
There's a lot of the me, the I. He even refers to himself like Walt Whitman in the poem.
Yeah, apparently he like didn't have his name on the book in the first edition.
Interesting.
Except he did have his name in the first poem.
Yeah. Walt Whitman, an American, one of the roughs in a cosmos, disorderly, fleshy, and sensual, eating, drinking, and breeding. No sentimentalist, no stander above men and women or apart from them, no more modest than immodest. Unscrew the locks from the doors. Unscrew the doors themselves from their jambs. Whoever degrades another degrades me, and whatever is done or said returns at last to me, and whatever I do or say I also return. Yeah, so it gets a little bit like me, me, me.
Yeah. Well, there are lots of moments where it's me, me, me. I
Yeah.
mean, because he's like, you know, I am this, and I am this, and I am this, and I am also this, and all of this also passes through me. I mean, that's like, I would say what this whole poem kind of is.
Dude, my favorite line in this whole poem is, I guess it's kind of like right smack in the middle there. I don't have sections on this. Uh, God damn it. I'm trying to see
What's
where.
the line?
The line is, "Come now, I will not be tantalized. You conceive too much of articulation." I love
That
that.
was good.
You conceive too much of articulation.
I gotta know where it is now.
It's on page 41 in my version, but I'm trying to see because there are like little pauses or breaks where he would maybe
So
make a
it's,
section.
yeah.
To behold the daybreak might be the first thing starting that section.
Section 25. So it is pretty much right in the middle.
Yeah.
Dazzling and tremendous, how quick the sunrise would kill me. That's how that starts.
Yeah, okay, yeah, nice, nice.
Which is
Dazzling
a great
instrument,
line.
yeah.
And with a great line with no punctuation in the middle anywhere. Dazzling and tremendous, how quick the sunrise would kill me.
Do you have any punctuation at the end of the line?
Comma.
Same. Okay, so that line's the
Okay.
same.
If I could not now and always send sunrise out of me. And then we also ascend dazzling and tremendous as the sun. We found our own, oh, my soul, in the calm and the cool of the daybreak. My voice goes after what my eyes cannot reach. With the twirl of my tongue, I encompass worlds and volumes of worlds. Right? So that's what I mean when I say it gets a little into himself. I mean, what you kind of, I guess, have to be, right? To declare a oneness of all things in this way, maybe, but I don't know. Oh yeah, come. Yeah. So that is also section 25. Come now, I will not be tantalized. You conceive too much of articulation.
Do you not
Do
know
you
how
not
the buds
know?
beneath are folded?
You don't have, do you not know, O speech, how the buds beneath you are folded?
No, it says, "Do you not know how the buds beneath are folded, waiting in gloom protected by frost, the dirt receding before my prophetical screams?"
Yeah, I have that O speech in between.
Okay. No speech in mine here. So he did, like, kind of really make edits to over multiple decades here to this thing. And it's interesting to think. I mean, this is an argument I guess people could make. I mean, like, which version is the version we should settle on? Blah blah blah. Oh, the most recent, the most edited, or the original, undisturbed kind of thing? Purist? I don't know.
I mean, they both have their own. It's like I have the same thing with Marianne Moore's poem poetry. I like both versions in their own ways. I mean, I think realistically, the longer one for her is better, but I appreciate them both. I think these just offer us different things, and I don't think it's necessarily what we get out of each individual poem. I think maybe in terms of how he moved the poems around as it expanded. So, like, how he took those first 12 poems and how he spread them out and rearranged them throughout is interesting
Yeah.
to me.
This poem is so fucking long, dude.
Yeah, I mean, we start with, I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me is good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul.
Yeah. And then for all of you Dead Poet Society lovers, right, towards the end, I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world. So a little nice little. That's where that Dead Poets Society scene comes from. Barbaric yup. Over the roofs of the world. And then the last thing I underlined was like one of the last lines. Again, the one that Bloom always refers to. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles.
Yeah, that's a great line. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean.
Yeah.
But I shall be good health to you nevertheless, and filter and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keeping courage. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere, waiting for you. I mean, that's a fucking killer ending to a poem, no matter what you think of the whole thing. And one thing we talked about is like, would this be a better poem if there were less of it?
Probably.
I think we would like it better, but I don't know if it would technically be better. Right? Like, I feel like there's a lot going on in here that like I didn't really pay attention to because I'm not as well acquainted as I should be with the history. But yeah, I think if it were a bit more concise, it would be.
Well, it's an important distinction to make. It's just that whether we would like it better or not doesn't necessarily mean shit, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to, Although, I mean, in my opinion, the long, long poems, unless you're trying to kind of do in the form of the epic or something, like it's usually could always be shorter. But, whatever. All right. Anything else on Song of Myself that we didn't cover? I mean, it's not like we covered a whole lot, but it's a long fucking poem, dude.
I just realized that I had underlined the line above your favorite line, and then I have the next line circled. Walt, you contain enough. It's so self-referential. Yeah. Walt, you contain enough. Why don't you let it out then? Come now, I will not be tantalized.
Yeah. It says sarcastically, Walt, you understand enough. Why don't you let it out then?
Yeah.
Is that an edit? Is that different?
No, I mean, it's the line above it is, so it goes, speech is the twin of my vision. It is unequal to measure itself. It provokes me forever. It says sarcastically, Walt, you contain enough. Why don't you let it out then?
Okay. One change then, instead of contain, it says understand in my version.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You understand enough. That's interesting.
Yeah. Why don't you let it out then? Come now, it will not be yeah.
I think that's a more interesting line.
Understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could talk all day about the differences in terms of edits over the course of his lifetime, but...
yeah, I mean, but basically... Yeah, and you have sections where he's like taking you across America and just like naming the landscape or like naming different animals that he is one with.
Yeah.
Or like, he talks about, different kinds of agony at one point. There's the space and time section.
Any poems you really wanted to hit?
Well, the ones that I liked the most were probably the shortest.
My favorite in this collection, or the one that I think works the most, again, I don't have titles here, but it starts with sauntering the pavement or riding the country byroad. Here then are faces.
How far after Song of Myself is it?
2, 3 poems after Song of Myself in my version.
So it is it The Sleepers?
I don't know. There's no title.
Because that's really late in mine.
It's just sauntering the pavement or riding the country byroad. Here then are faces of friendship, precision, caution, suavity, ideality.
Oh, I fucking know which one that is. Hang on.
It's about the faces, basically.
Yeah, I think it's called The Faces.
Oh, really?
Faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's late in mine. Yep, sauntering the pavement or ride its faces. And it was also split in sections.
Yeah, no sections in mine.
Yeah, it's split into 5 sections. A later edition.
Yeah, and I kind of had little messages like my thing with Song of Myself was I was like, yeah, there's a lot of good lines, but I couldn't help but find it's kind of mediocre. Not to say that it's bad, but it just I find it kind of somewhat tiring, you know. The second poem and the third poem kind of just extensions of the first kind of Song of Myself.
So the second for you is I Sing the Body Electric, which is just like a more sexual song of myself.
Yeah, let me get it here. Come closer to me, push close my lovers, and take the best I possess.
The second poem,
Yeah.
I think in mine it's I Sing the Body Electric. I mean, I think that's the first line. Or maybe it's the second in mine and not in yours.
Yeah.
Hang on. Maybe it's the reverse. Yeah, what's the second in yours? It's
Come closer to me.
Yeah, I wrote them down. Like I marked them off. A Song for the Occupations. That was actually one that I really liked. Even though I thought it worked well. Although it is also, I felt more of the same. The ones that were maybe the most interesting or the most different to me were, let's see, it's either Europe or a Boston Ballad. Hang on. They're really close together. Yeah. A Boston Ballad was the one with ghosts.
How does that start?
To get betimes in Boston town, I rose this morning early. Here's a good place at the corner. I must stand and see the show. Clear the way there, Jonathan.
It's not even in mine.
Wow. It was just the most different, I think. I don't know that I actually liked it so much as it was a departure from what felt like the sort of Song of Myself style listing poem, because it is a lot of that. It is a lot of repetitive listing.
Well, it sounds like it might have been a poem composed at a later time, too, then. Which is why it might be
It says
so.
1854 under it,
Huh.
but I don't know why. Because the other poems do not say, they don't have a date associated. Yeah, I liked the last thing I read. Maybe it was because I was at the end and I was like relieved.
In mine, the poems at the end do get shorter.
I was bored by There Was a Child Went Forth. It was just more of the same to me. And maybe like we just are this way as like, poets do this. They'll like sort of write about the same idea over and over and over.
I know I do have that poem in there. Clear the way there, Jonathan.
Yeah. Is that how it starts?
Yeah, but it's set up very weird in my book. Like it looks like it just is part of another poem, but it's not.
Mm.
Yeah, and the poems do get a lot shorter as they go through here. And then I think the last poem in mine are the Great are the Myths, I too delight in them.
Yeah, and that's the one that I do not have. Yeah, I mean, he has really short poems toward the end here.
Well, and yours are much more extended, so there is
Yeah.
like you have Laird Astronomer and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not
And like a
mine.
million tiny, tiny poems. Like even in the very beginning, I have that section that's just inscriptions, and those are mostly also very short poems. The first one is Oneself I Sing.
Okay.
Oneself I sing a simple separate person, yet utter the word democratic, the word en masse. Of physiology from top to toe I sing, not physiognomy alone, nor brain alone is worthy for the muse. I say the form complete is worthier far. The female equally with the male I sing. O life immense in passion, pulse, and power, cheerful for freest action formed under the laws divine, the modern man I sing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. It almost feels like these inscriptions are like an outline for Song of Myself.
Pieces that didn't make it in or something.
Well, there's for him I sing, I raise the present on the past. At some perennial tree, out of its roots, the present on the past. With time and space, I him dilate and fuse the immortal laws to make himself by them the law unto himself. And then there's like to the states, on journeys through the states.
Yeah, I don't have any of that in mind.
Yeah, I hear America singing. Then the long one before Song of Myself is starting from Paumanok. Yeah, it all like I mean it all feels very the same. It feels like listening to, sounds of a landscape distinctly American.
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say it sounds like listening to like some drunk in a bar.
I mean also that,
Yeah.
but like a drunk in a bar during the 1800s.
Yeah. Rapping his
It's
little
like I'm a
cane.
poet.
Yeah.
I'm a bard.
The bard.
Yeah, man. Poet who smells like shit. Yeah, and like then he has all of these poems about dying.
Yeah, it makes sense in the deathbed version.
God, how depressing. The deathbed version.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm fascinated by people that are able to write about what they're feeling as they know they're gonna die.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I remember reading Christopher Hitchens on mortality, where he was basically dying of cancer and he was writing this book and he didn't even really finish it because he died, right? But he was just
Yeah.
writing about like what it is to be somebody dying of throat cancer, like what that feels like, what he's thinking about in his life, like what he did with his life, when you're on your deathbed and you're like, oh my God, like, are you proud of it? Do you wish you could have done more? Like, what are you missing? It's incredibly moving. I think you can find that on Amazon. I mean, I'm very interested in that though too. Like writers, particularly probably because writers are more articulate than at least in the written word sense of things. I'm fascinated by it. As I get older too, I've been more fascinated in like what is it like when you know you're going to die and like you're feeling the
Yeah.
pain of death every day kind of thing, slowly getting worse. And it's kind of yeah, I mean maybe it's just because it's one of those things that we're all terrified of, like our own death, so it's kind of like, yeah, I'd be interested to read actually a lot of his stuff, what Whitman wrote about it, being on his deathbed, finishing this last volume here, doing edits and adding things. That would be so. Listeners, you make a choice. There's more versions than the ones that we did on this too. I mean, I think there's a couple of different edits and like updates he put out through his lifetime there. But if you want to read like the thing that like basically if you want to read what everybody read in 1855, then you would buy like the version I have of the original 1855 edition. If you want to read it a little bit
Hold
more,
up.
okay,
Hold up. I just read something.
nice.
The City Dead House. By the city dead house by the gate, as idly sauntering, wending my way from the clangor, I curious pause, for lo, an outcast form, a poor dead prostitute brought, Her corpse they deposit, unclaimed it lies on the damp brick pavement. Why didn't I read this poem? I mean, it's late as shit. I shouldn't laugh at this. Dead house of love, house of madness and sin, crumbled, crushed. House of life, erewhile, talking and laughing, but ah, poor house. Dead even then, months, years, and echoing. Garnished house, but dead, dead, dead.
Yeah. Be
Circle
interesting.
That one for later.
There's a lot of people when they do get close to death, I wonder, they tend to get a little bitter. Because, I mean, they're dying. Right? Like.
This is about, this is like halfway, a little more than halfway through my copy. Yeah. Interesting. I'd be interested to read some of the later poems and like how much he departed, because it seems like he stayed pretty committed to the whole democratic vision of poetry.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to see how far he moves from it or how much it develops.
Fucking Walt Whitman.
Yeah, like, I mean, even later poems, this one ends, and henceforth I will go celebrate anything I see or am, and sing and laugh and deny nothing. So, like, even of those, words that we get very early on, we see echoes of them later on in the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I spent most of my time reading Song of Myself and feeling really quite bored with the exception of a few moments. I feel like maybe I didn't appreciate those moments quite enough.
Yeah, maybe we'll revisit this in like a decade and see how our opinions on it changed.
Yeah, well, it's been like at least a decade since I've picked up.
Same, yeah. But I also,
yeah.
that a decade ago when I was reading poetry, I mean, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, dude. Like I was just like, oh, poetry.
I mean, I feel as much an idiot now reading Walt Whitman as I did then, but like I also feel as maybe slightly less, bothered by it, but it's still, still not my guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what
Like
fascinates me.
Between him and Dickinson, I'll always go Dickinson, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, me too. That's okay. So this is a Dickinson pod. That's what everybody just needs to know. This is all about Dickinson.
If those are America's like first two, big deal poets that we put in the canon, I'm gonna go Dickinson every time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Same. So basically what we're saying is this is a Dickinson podcast. And if you want to have a Whitman podcast, well, it's not this one.
Yeah, go elsewhere.
No. All right. Yeah, I'm bored as shit.
Go sing yourself.
Yeah, go sing yourself somewhere else. I have nothing else to say.
Yeah, I just don't like people who like themselves this much. I think that's what it is when it comes down to it. He likes himself too much.
Yeah, I mean, there are parts of it that I thought were, I mean, it's a nice, I agree with the sentiment. I think most people agree with the sentiment, but I think it's a little naive.
We agree with some of the sentiment.
Well, I think it's easy to agree with the sentiment because it's kind of like the American sentiment, but
everything's a poem, dude.
Yeah. But it's more than that too. Like it's he's talking about like they keep always saying
it's the American, whole fucking philosophy.
Right. Yeah. So it's easy to agree with the philosophy, but like I think the philosophy may be a little naive at times. But maybe that doesn't matter at all. So
I don't think it's my philosophy.
What, the poet?
Transcendentalism.
Oh yeah, transcendentalism, yeah. It's, I don't know. Like I said, I kept trying to not be cynical about this, but I just couldn't help but keep being my cynical self and just my cynical self that just hates everything. that I come across.
Yeah, I mean, like I thought I would enjoy more the poet who like, and when we opened this, I was like, yeah, man, I feel like I'm about to get really into Whitman and like
Right,
this is
yeah.
gonna be my moment.
Finally gonna
I was like,
go into that one, yeah.
it's finally like something will have changed and I will find, myself renewed by this book. And, like for someone who talks so much about like, I don't know, like gross body stuff, like sweat and shit,
Right.
you know? I didn't like this very much at all. Usually love that stuff.
Yeah.
It was just too much like, men's muscles in their pants. It's like, yeah, that's hot and all, but like, all right, chill. It was too horny all the time.
Yeah, dude. I didn't get the horniness aspect out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I could have just been putting that there,
Yeah. I didn't. I mean, maybe I just wasn't seeing it. But my mind was a much more condensed version.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anything else on this, Soph?
Mm, I am like ready. I'm ready to be done with the Song of Myself. Although now I feel like I have to return to it. I need to know it better. Like it's this piece of this really important,
Yeah.
moment in history. I mean, it's interesting to hear like to read all of like the Civil War stuff.
See, mine doesn't even have the Civil War stuff because it was 1855, so it was before the Civil War was
Yeah.
like happening. But it
I
was
think what
leading
we're
up to
saying
it.
is like, read drum taps.
Read these books. I mean, this is why we encourage you to buy these books and add them to your own library because having a copy of Whitman's Leaves of Grass on your shelf, yeah, Sophie and I have now read this, a decade ago, and now we read it again, 10 years later. We'll probably read it 10 years from now too and have a different perspective, a different appreciation, even if it's not like we're suddenly like in love with Whitman. It's like you still, you're changing as a person, you're changing, you're getting educated through those years. Like you're not going to have the same interpretation every time you read something. And I mean, that's important to remind too, right? Like that's just something to keep in mind while you're reading. This is why you got to buy a book and keep it on your shelf so that you can revisit it later. Like build out your knowledge base in these texts because, yeah, I mean, it's important.
I mean, if you like that shit,
Yeah, I mean, or
if you
just
like
read
that
what you
shit.
like, but yeah, you should also be reading all of it. I mean, we should be expanding everything. You should constantly be absorbing everything. I mean, my goal is to read as much as I can before I die, basically.
Yeah.
Maybe that was Whitman's goal.
Yeah, I think Whitman wanted to be famous.
Well, he definitely is, dude. If he wasn't in his lifetime, he is now.
Ruthless self-promotion. Guess you have to.
I mean, even more so, and now the internet age, dude. Everybody has a voice, but you got to make us care. You know what I mean? Like anybody can say what they
Yeah.
want, but who cares? Aggressive self promotion.
Yeah,
The only game in
that's the
town.
lesson. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Poetry. Who cares?
Yeah, dude. That's the Leaves of Grass summary. Who cares? All right, yeah, I'm bored talking about this.
Yeah.
I wish I had more to offer listeners, but I don't.
Yeah, it's pretty boring.
Yeah, so you
Like
should read it for yourself.
I urge you to read it and try not to be bored. I fell asleep reading this book so many times.
Yeah.
Like, just instantly.
Like
I think this
down.
is a really great falling asleep book.
Like laying down in bed, picking it up, and yeah.
I mean, on the couch. I slept on the couch many nights while I was reading this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking like 9:30 p.m.
Damn.
Yeah, it's bad. Oh, you know what? I like to think of time as far as long poems go. You know, we don't have to go back into it. I mean, we can if you want to.
I don't even know if I have that in my...
To think of time, of all that retrospection, to think of today and the ages continued henceforward. Have you guessed you yourself would not continue?
Yeah. Not a day passes, not a minute or second without a corpse.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Yeah, that's the line I highlighted from that one, yeah.
Yeah.
When the dull nights are over, and the dull days also. Yeah. When the soreness of lying so much in bed is over.
Yeah. So, prepare for a lot of repeated phrases and a lot of ands and a lot of commas.
Or if you buy the original, a lot of ellipses.
Yeah. And probably still a lot of commas.
Yeah. All right.
We're bored as shit.
We're bored as shit. Let me get my little spiel, since this is one I think we're...
Yeah, dude, rustling papers loud as shit right now.
Yeah, sorry. I think it adds ambiance, dude, so it knows we're using, like, physical books and physical pages to write notes. No. Alright, so you can contact us at heavyboardpodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/heavyboard. Receive full uncensored episodes for subscribers, bonus interviews, bonus content, all that good stuff. Check out our YouTube channels for more. Links to all the books and everything we covered in the descriptions, both versions. And next episode, we're doing Butterfield 8 by John O'Hara. Probably his most famous novel. And I think Sophie said there's a version with a nice introduction by Fran Lebowitz, which Fran is on our list to do on this pod eventually, so we're gonna cover Fran.
I just purchased for $4.88 on eBay.
Yeah, so you can get good copies. I have a weird version. I have like a Library of American like anthology style version with that in it, so I'll be using that one. But you can find cheap copies like paperbacks of the classic version and all that good stuff. But yeah. All right, this has been Heavy Board. My name's Andrew Whitstadt.
Oh, and I had shit in my mouth, but I'm Sophie Weiner.
I guess we'll see you guys next time.
Shit in my mouth.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile.
No!
Dinner,
Resources.
life, friends is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources. American resources.
Being bored?
Some activities are intentional, right?
It shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.